there. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see who we've got on this morning. So let me know whether you're watching this on the replay or right now, where you're coming in from, listening in from, and how you're doing today. We're going to be talking about the hamstrings. So I know most of the people that I work with, most of the people that come into my world have some realization that their hamstrings need. We'll see if Facebook plays nice this morning. Most people know that their hamstrings might need a little bit of work. Good morning, Jackie. Good to see you. And they're doing hamstring stretches. However, they're maybe not seeing the results that they want to see. So if you are an entrepreneur and you sit at the desk a lot and you have some nagging aches and pains in the low back, the hips, the knees, this might be the source of the problem, might be your hamstrings, and how you're stretching your hamstrings could use a little bit of refinement. So I'll go over some common things that I see and some ways to get some more bang for your buck. Good morning, everyone. So if you have a problem with your hamstrings or think you have a hamstring issue, then comment below. Also comment below with some of your favorite hamstring stretches, because I'll be going over a few of them and what can go wrong and maybe what you can do better. So let me know where you are. And obviously this is a big topic only because the hamstrings, they can affect your knee, they can affect the hip, they can affect the low back, and there is a dynamic between the hamstrings in the back of the leg and the hip flexors in the front of the torso. So they all play together, all right? Last week, if you missed it, make sure you go catch it. We talked about how sometimes we bring our habits of what we do off the mat onto the mat. In particular, we talked about this with down dog and pelvis position, right? So obviously, down dog is one of the more common stretches for hamstrings. The other common one on the yoga mat is the forward fold, right? So I have a ton of clients and patients that I work with, and they come into the office and they say, oh, I'm doing hamstring stretches, right? And Jackie, the down dog or the forward fold? Right, last week we talked about down dog and the pelvis position and what can go wrong there. So if you missed it, go check it out. Forward fold, right? Very common posture in a variety of yoga classes, everything from advanced to beginner, or beginner to advanced, I should say. And I have people coming into the office and one or two things commonly are happening. They feel that they're stretching their hamstrings, but I see this position, right? So the body will take the path of least resistance, and in this position, the path of least resistance is the low back. So most of the stretch is going to the low back, unfortunately, to the discs. And that's often why people are waking up in the morning or in the middle of the night after a yoga class and feeling soreness in their discs or their low back, right? Because most of the stretch is going up high, or I see this, right? The bent knee position. So they're not actually retraining the hamstrings. So the hamstrings, just for a review, just so you guys can get a foundation or a background, are located in the back of the leg. In a general sense, they start up at the sit bones and come down below the knee. So ideally, where we want to feel a stretch is in the muscle belly, the mid part of the hamstrings. Sometimes yogis get what's called, or also known as yoga butt, right? And they're stretching the tendon right up at the sit bones. We want to avoid that, because if you've ever had that injury or a hamstring strain there or overuse, it takes forever to heal. The other place we want to avoid is behind the knee, again, because most of the time it's tendons or ligaments right there, and they don't get good blood supply, so they don't necessarily bounce back very quickly. The other mistake with the hamstrings I see is that people are stretching their nerves. So they're in this forward fold position that I mentioned with the pelvis rounded, the low back rounded, and they're feeling a stretch all the way from the low back down to the calves. And here's a little insight. There's no muscle that travels all the way from the low back to the calves. So if you're feeling one long line, that's typically nerve. And nerves aren't elastic tissue. They're very irritable. So when we're stretching, yanking, pulling on them, if you have any like sciatica to begin with, it's just going to exacerbate it and make it worse. So those are common mistakes. What can you do instead? So I don't know where, actually, I do know, but a lot of people do not want to use the strap, right? It's like when I am standing, I teach a hot class, and when I'm standing at the door offering blocks, some people are like repelled. They're like, don't even let that block touch me. No, 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 I don't need a block. Here's the thing, I use straps, so I stretch my hamstrings most every day because for me, my pattern is to overuse them and they just get very tight easily and will contribute to my disc soreness. So I use straps because if I go right into the forward fold or down dog right off the bat, I'm gonna come into that rounded position that we talked about last week. So I use the straps to reinforce a different motion. Also, when I use the straps, I'm lying on the ground. So again, as I just mentioned, the body will take the path of least resistance. And if your hamstrings are very tight, they're gonna be the resistance. So your body's gonna try to avoid them, either going above to the low back, stretching the low back instead, or stretching the knee, right? So often I have a lot of patients that come into the office and they actually are doing a good thing by using the strap and doing this very common one. However, the mistake I see is that they're hyperextending the knee, so they're not engaging this quadricep muscle at all. They're stretching right back here, and that's where they feel it, is either right back here or in the calf. They don't feel the stretch at all in their hamstrings. And what happens then is in life, they get used to that hyperextension. So even people with tight hamstrings that are strong, so a lot of males, this is super common, and females, even though we don't think of males being hypermobile, this is an area where I do see a lot of hypermobility. So they hyperextend the knee because they're always stretching or reinforcing that motion. So again, another pattern that they're doing in life, they bring onto the mat, or they bring this pattern from the mat to life. I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but I see it a lot. So they're hyperextending the knee and again, stretching the tendons and the ligaments versus the muscle belly, for example. So what can be done instead is often not going as high with the strap. So if they're hyperextending here, is lowering the leg, using the arms to keep the chest open, and really backing off from that locked knee. So they back off. You know, there's a cue in yoga called the micro bend. Find the micro bend, but we don't want to stay here, right? We don't want to reinforce that bending motion because hamstrings shorten when the knee is bent. So if we really want to re-educate the body, retrain the body, it's learning how to be really active and precise. So re-straightening the leg and finding the true straightening with the quadricep engaged. And that really changes everything. It can change it also in the forward fold. If you do the same thing, you can try it right now. If you're coming into the forward fold, and again, you want to find that good pelvis position, lead with a long spine, but you can hyperextend, and I feel it right here in the back of the knee, or I can back off, find the micro bend, and then come to true straightening, where the quadriceps are engaged. Then I get a much more efficient stretch right here in the belly. So often what I do is I start with the strap and I re-educate my body. It's a daily work. I have to do it pretty much almost every day because for whatever reason, my body just wants to go back to the hyperextension of the knee or the rounding of the back. And the way that I find that keeps my low back, where even though I have these fibrous tears in my discs, I don't feel pain 99% of the time because I'm continuously doing this work, and it's very tedious. And yes, I can do the splits, I can do the fancy poses, but most commonly I'm just doing the strap and re-educating my body on how to strengthen the quadriceps and avoid the hyperextension, right? So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do that I see very commonly is people really forcing the hamstrings. And often that's what leads to this bent knee position in the forward fold. Or the other one I commonly see is Parsvottanasana, so that pyramid pose, right? Ideally the legs should be straight. Again, quadriceps engage, pelvis square to the front, coming in with a nice long spine. But instead of stopping where the knee wants to bend, people round here and bend, and then they do the pose, and they're white knuckling it. They're forcing, and I can tell because I can see their toes are gripping the ground, their feet are white, and the body is really shaking. Not to say that shaking's bad, but what motion do you want to reinforce? Is it a shakiness of because you're pushing and forcing the body? Where's the stretch coming from? What's your intention? Or is it a shakiness because you're a new pattern? So is it a shakiness because you're coming into the pose with the legs straight, right? It's going to be a much different feeling and pose. The same thing with the strap. Again, I see a lot of people forcing and literally white knuckling it, and the leg is bent. And they're not going to retrain the hamstrings in a new way that's different, because if you think about it, right, this is how we sit, or when you're running, when the hamstrings are tight, or cycling, all those activities, you're just reinforcing the same pattern. So you have to have the legs straight and let go of the forcing. One way to really notice if you're forcing is to go into the posture super slow and use the breath. Okay, so inhaling for length, exhaling, breathing out the tension, and just allowing the body to unravel versus yanking and pulling. So try that next yoga class. See if you can slowly ease into the pose by, here, let me give you an example. So for the pyramid pose, right, because I'm not exactly super warm right now, so you can see how I can use the breath to come into it versus force. So if I'm to force, which I'm not going to do aggressively because obviously I don't want to hurt myself, see my knee starts to bend right here. And I can hang out right here, but that puts a lot of strain on my hamstrings and my low back. Versus if I use my breath, and I use blocks, for example, then I can allow the body to open more efficiently, right? So I'll inhale for length. Exhale, I re-engage the quad. I keep re-squaring the pelvis. I actually engage my core as well. It's a totally different pose than just this, right? So very active with a nice long spine. And then each exhale, now I can come a little bit deeper. Then I might hang out here for a little bit more. And then I can come a little bit deeper. So eventually, right, I can come all the way into the pose with the arms here, the arms here. You see the shakiness, but that's only because I'm reestablishing a new motion. I'm just doing the other side to balance myself out versus bending and forcing and that shakiness of white knuckling it, where the body's going to resist you and it's going to tighten because unconsciously your brain thinks it's not safe, right? So, okay, a couple of things to go over as a recap here. You can comment below if you're watching this on the replay or right now. What's your takeaway? What are you learning today? Maybe before you do down dog or your forward fold, you're going to use a strap and retrain the hamstrings and the use of the quads and being strong and active in your poses. Maybe you're going to learn that. Maybe it's how you're stretching using the strap. You're going to notice if you're hyperextending in the knee and not engaging the quad. And then you're repeating that in your forward fold. Or third thing is noticing if you're forcing and the knees are bending and the body is fighting against you. Instead, try the breath. So, some things that you can do to create a little bit more efficient work with your hamstring stretches, only because it is a very, very common issue that I see, that tightness can contribute, again, to the knee problems, hip problems, low back, even the feet sometimes. And then from there, I mean, there's a lot more work to even be done. You can do PNF stretches. There's things to distract the body, distract the mind, where again, we're letting go of, I call it taking the back door method. So you're letting go of the forcing and getting work more to the muscle belly, so then you're going to get longer lasting change, and you're going to start to create new patterns, new habits, new ways of moving in your life. Okay, let me know if this helps. Next week, I think I'm going to do the Facebook Live training Friday at 9 a.m. I'm going to try a different day and time. And of course, if this is creating some aha moments and you're like, yes, this is my problem, I need to take this to the next level, you want to work with me, I'll drop the link in the comments. You can just sign up for a free consultation. I have a variety of different programs, and on the call we'll just determine what's the best fit for you. So if you're looking for that next step, just click on the link, sign up for a free consult, and we'll get you going on the next path. And of course, we have the podcast this week is about energy and sound healing, which is a really great new way to create some change in your life through a different modality. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week. If you have some topics that you would like to hear about or get covered, just again drop them in the comments, send me a message. I do listen and try to incorporate those in as well. So I'll see you next week, Friday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bye for now.